For joining. My name is John Augustine, Senior Vice President of Business Development for WellNet. Today we're going to briefly show you how we solve the healthcare cost problem different than our competitors, which has allowed our broker partners to win more broker of record letters and retain their existing customers. We're going to be covering 5 topics in 15 minutes today to show you how we're different. The agenda items we're going to hit today are what you see on your screen here: quickly framing out the opportunity, WellNet's approach, our reporting, our high-touch service, and our distinct differences. In framing up the opportunity, I realize that most of the clients that you guys speak with, and frankly our target market for our level-funded health plan, are small and mid-sized companies, and most of those companies are fully insured. So a good way to frame up this conversation, the WellNet conversation, is by asking 2 simple questions. Does reducing claims actually reduce costs when I'm fully insured? Do carriers, fully insured carriers, have your best interests in mind, Mr. Client? I'm going to answer them on the next slide, but before I do, I'd like to just, build out the medical loss ratio conversation just to rehash what it means. Part of the Affordable Care Act said that if you're a fully insured carrier, you can only raise rates if your medical loss ratio is unfavorable. And that medical loss ratio applies to the entire pool of business for that fully insured carrier. As I see it, there's 2 types of groups that are good for self-funding and groups that are not. And if I think about those fully insured pools, they're basically average rates. That's the point of that pool. So what that tells me is 50% of the companies in that pool would probably be better off self-funded, while the other 50% would be better off fully insured. But this loss ratio rule always gets my wheels turning. Most revenues for fully insured carriers come from fully insured premiums. The carrier's profits are part of that premium, and specifically part of the 15% or the 20%, not part of the claims. So in order to raise revenues and raise profits, the carriers have to raise the premiums. But the MLR law specifically states that the carriers cannot raise premiums unless the claims represent more than 80 to 85% of that premium, which means that if the carriers want to make more money, they need your claims to go up. What that translates to, in my mind, is that there's zero financial incentive for a fully insured carrier to actually manage claims costs. And think about the market that your clients are in today. With the consolidation that's happening throughout the industry, within 10 years, most of the fully insured carriers will probably be publicly traded. And publicly traded companies are driven by revenues, profit, and share price. If a fully insured carrier reduces claims costs for that entire fully insured pool, they must lower premiums, which translates to lower revenues, lower profits, and lower share price, which, as you know, when you think about Wall Street, is a lose-lose-lose proposition. That is not what they're in business to do. On the contrary, partially self-funded plans pay for only the health care their people consume. So when you're fully insured, lowering claims does not mean your costs are going to go down, because you're part of a much bigger pool. But in the self-funded space, if you're one of those 50% of the companies that are healthier than average, you will only pay for the health care your people consume. And what that translates into is consume less health care and consume less cost, pay less. Here's a picture of what we just talked about. So what WellNet believes we've built is a bridge that spans the gap between employers and employees. We have fully customizable plan designs. All of the data is integrated, and as those of you know, we own a software company that allows us to provide all sorts of predictive analytics, allows us to predict the future, tell you exactly what's wrong with the population today, and tell you what that means for you 6 months from now, a year from now, 2 years from now. When you've got data like that, you can start to automate campaigns and create population health management programs that engage the right people at the right time, providing support and coaching services that improve member health, and since we're partially self-funded, lower claims, which lowers costs. Down here is the fully insured model, and there's a disconnect between risk management programs and the actual health plan. The carriers don't want these programs to work for reasons that I just explained. So think about it in a slightly different manner. Ask yourself, when is the last time one of your fully insured clients got a reduction in their premiums? It doesn't happen very often. The carriers don't want it to happen, and the model they've built is not made for that to happen. Now, 4 out of 5 years, when you're self-funded, you guys know, for anyone that does a lot of self-funding, 4 out of 5 years are good years, which means your clients reap the benefits of being self-funded. Instead of all these unused dollars going back to the insurance carrier, they're going back to your client. That's a very important concept. Self-funding is not right for everyone, but for about 50% of the groups out there, it could be a very good solution. Now, WellNet's model is really built on 4 key pillars. The first pillar is stop-loss insurance. All of our plans have A-rated stop-loss built into them, and while we are happy to shop the stop-loss on your behalf, you are more than welcome to secure your own stop-loss, and we'll be happy to administer the plan. Second important component is a good network. WellNet uses the Aetna or the Cigna PPO networks, and I can get more specific on both of them during one-off conversations. From the pharmacy perspective, we use the CVS Caremark National Network of Pharmacies. Those plans within our health plans can be custom built, meaning that we can use a wide open formulary, we can use no restrictions, or if you'd like to save a lot of money on your drugs, we can do things like step therapy, mandatory generic, mandatory mail order, things like that. And then the fourth pillar is probably the most important, which is population health management. If your client's going to partially self-fund and only pay for the health care that people consume, clearly it becomes important to consume less health care because there's a direct correlation between reduced claims and reduced cost. We do that through analytics, health coaching, biometric screenings, and incentive management. If I had to boil down everything WellNet does from a risk management perspective into one slide, here it is. Ultimately, as I said, we manage risk to lower cost. Our software allows us to perform the analytics, stratify the risk, perform that predictive modeling, and give all holders the reporting and data necessary to figure out what wellness programs, what coaching programs are relevant to my people. And the only thing we don't know about your organization once we've got all their data is the culture. What types of incentives, maybe penalties? What combination of the two will drive the behavioral change needed to lower costs? We have to create lasting habits. Our technology enables us to integrate all of the data, automate most of the process of member engagement, and ultimately connect the right people at the right time with the right care. And that in turn lowers cost. Now, for our clients and for our brokers, we hold all the reporting together through a portal that we give you access to. You can download reports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Our members also receive a portal, which allows them to access all of their relevant information, and we even give them a mobile app that they can track, manage their claims, talk to our nurses, etc. What does all this mean? Here's a really nice case study for a group down in Florida. They had currently they have 155 employees, but in 2013 they had 74. They received a renewal on 96 employees in 2014 that was $908,000. It represented a 49% increase. WellNet took this group through medical questionnaires, and we offered them a maximum cost of $580,000, which was a savings of $328,000 off of their fully insured premium. 1 year later, the group grew again, and we issued a renewal that was $971,000. The broker shopped the fully insured market and found that the best rate he could find for a comparable plan was $1.6 million, which was a savings, again, of $642,000. So in a 2-year period, we were able to save this group almost $1 million. It's a wonderful example of how partial self-funding can be a radically successful solution for the right groups. What's our service model look like? So on the front end, for those of you that have written business, you know that we've got a great sales team that can help you in the field, whether it be on-site or via webinar. Once a group is willing to move forward, we then assign a dedicated implementation manager, which will be your single point of contact for all things implementation. That's the only person you'll deal with, and they'll take you through the first 30 to 90 days, depending on how quickly we can get that plan set up. Once there's no more questions and the group's happy, everyone's ready to go, we'll transition you over to a dedicated account manager who will now act as your single point of contact for all things service. Our account managers now, starting in 2016, are doing very nice, thorough 6-month reviews for our clients. And then at the 10-month mark, we issue renewals, as you can see, and we also can release them at the 90-day mark if necessary. We just have to talk about that up front. One thing you'll find with WellNet is that we're very transparent from a service perspective. So you'll have not only landline numbers to virtually everyone within the organization, including the CEO, you'll even have his cell phone number. So we give the phone numbers out, and we hope you don't have to call them, but if you do, we're going to answer the telephone. And that's a big differentiator. From a quoting perspective, there's really 2 ways we can go about quoting. Option 1 is the submission of historic claims data. The first 2 bullets that you see there are really what we're trying to get when we receive historic claims data. We need monthly claims and enrollments, and we need the diagnosis and, more importantly, the prognosis of any high-cost claimants. What we're really trying to understand is we're trying to help our stop-loss carriers understand what the aggregate claims risk is and what the catastrophic claims risk is. As long as we can get our hands around those 2 items, we'll be able to underwrite the group. If we can't use historic claims data, now we need medical questionnaires. The preferred method, if we're going to use questionnaires, is online. We have our own free portal, and then we participate with FormFire, Easy Apps Online, and a new company, this is free to use out of the Midwest, called eHealth App. If we can't use online, then we do accept paper applications. We've certainly got our own forms, and we can accept any other vendor's forms as well. Now here's a sampling of our differentiators. These are our key differentiators. WellNet returns 100% of the surplus 100% of the time. Even in the unfortunate event of termination, WellNet still returns 100% of that surplus. There are no strings attached. I mentioned various networks that we can offer at Cigna or any number of regional PPO networks. From a stop-loss perspective, it's very important, particularly at renewal time, that you have access to multiple stop-loss vendors. And remember that WellNet allows you and your clients to secure their own stop-loss if you'd rather do it that way. From a plan design perspective, we do go down to 10 enrolled lives on our level-funded health plans, and you can build the benefit design any which way you'd like. We certainly have our own plan designs, but you're more than happy to customize them any which way you'd like, and we never charge for customization. From a funding perspective, if you think about the 1,000 life groups out there, they do not level fund, and we do not require that your clients level fund. We give them 2 options. Option 1, you can level fund, and WellNet will give you back 100% of your surplus. Option 2 is as simple as saying the client manages their own surplus. So they put the claims portion of their monthly bill in their own bank account, and then we only use what we need, and the client manages their own surplus. The last one is very, very important, population health management. And I'm not really going to get into it in detail here, but if you're going to choose to be self-funded, doesn't it make sense as the steward of the health plan that we try to support our people? I mean, if you think about it, a healthy employee not only costs very little from a health care perspective, but a healthy employee comes to work every day. They're productive at work every day, and they don't cause us workers' comp claims, typically. It's all tied together. Now we're going to go through a few of the questions here. We may not have time for all of these, but let's go through some of these questions. Okay, so the first question is, does WellNet have a telehealth solution? That's a wonderful question. And for those of you that might not know what that is, picture being able to pay about $3 per employee per month in this form of an admin fee, but then allowing members to use their telephone and video conferencing on their phone to speak with doctors and to receive prescriptions. But members don't even have to pay a copay. And the employer plan does not pay anything else. All they pay is that per employee per month fee. We do have those solutions. Currently, we use Teladoc. It's a good question. Someone else asked, are biometric screenings a separate charge? Yes is the answer. So we do charge extra for biometric screenings, and obviously the use of incentives would be at the will of the employer and at the expense of the employer. On a related note, the question is, does WellNet manage those incentives within the wellness plan? And the answer is yes. If you would like us to, we can manage those incentives on your behalf, although we do not actually fund the cost of those incentives. Okay. Can you talk about the renewal process and shopping the stop loss? That's a great question, and it's one of the things that I love about stop loss. When your group is partially self-funded, renewals are pretty easy, at least in our case, because we give you all the data. I want you to think about healthcare costs in 3 distinct buckets when you're self-funded: stop loss premium, administrative fees, and claims. So as you're trying to forecast what the renewal is going to be, just think about those 3 components. Did the stop loss pay out a lot? If so, how much did it pay out compared to how much premium they took in? The stop loss carrier wants to operate by decent loss ratios as well. Is the administrative fee going to go up every year? Not every year, but it'll go up occasionally. And then the biggest component is, what did the claims do? Part of your stop loss renewal is a claims projection for next year. With us, you're going to know where every single dollar went. So is the group running good, bad? That's going to determine what the renewal is. And again, from a stop loss perspective, we shop it with a few different vendors, and by all means, shop it on your own. That's a ton of added flexibility that our competitors don't have. Then I'll hit one last question here. When does WellNet return the surplus? That's a great question. Now, from a stop loss contract perspective, we do not force our clients into any particular stop loss contract. Typically, we offer 12-18 contracts on a level funded basis, but that's negotiable. We can move in either direction. We can do 12-15s, 12-24s. We can do whatever you'd like to see. As it relates to returning the surplus is always returned at the end of that stop loss contract, whatever it might be. So if it's a 12-18 contract, we would return the surplus 6 months after the close of the plan year, which would be 18 months from inception. If we haven't answered your question, we will answer them by the end of the day today via email. As one of the category leaders in providing innovative healthcare delivery, WellNet gives our brokers and their clients the data, tools, and people necessary to make better, more informed decisions regarding their healthcare options through our level-funded health plans, population health management. We've got lots of marketing information that we can make available to you guys, and we're happy to co-brand them for you as well. Thank you all so much for your time today. Please reach out to us anytime to schedule one-on-one meetings for either you or you and your clients. Thanks again, and have a wonderful day.